I think it may be working now. Let's check first before I speak too soon. I hope if anybody's been watching like these last like couple minutes, they're just sort of like, well, no, you've been live this entire time.
Everybody's just
Let me
like
see.
us staring at phones and just, is it working now?
When I have to mute a separate tab because it's also loading audio, that's
I
usually a
hope
good
if
sign,
anybody's.
actually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's
Yes,
working.
I think we are live now. And I'm going to exit out of that so I'm not using like a whole bunch of bandwidth on separate streams. Hi, we are live. I'll trim that out in post and pretend it never happened. And if you saw it, then you're like one of the, three the three lucky ones who gets to experience that. We are live here to chat about several things this week. I've got Kate already on screen. Say hi, Kate. Again, the second time. There were technical difficulties the first time.
Hello.
Kate is a little under the weather at the moment, but is a trooper and joined us. So we can attempt a bit of escapism, talk about what TV we watched this week, other than just like an obscene number of election hour footage. Have you been watching that as well, Kate?
I did yesterday, and then I actually needed to get stuff done today, so I couldn't really watch anymore today.
Completely fair and good for your
Also, I feel
mental
like that was
health.
a healthy choice on my part to stop watching.
Absolutely agree. If I could stop, I would, but here we are. But I have been watching some other stuff this week. I have finished the entire series of the full like 6 seasons of Schitt's Creek, which was incredible. Oh my god, I love that show so much. I actually finished that on election day. I also watched the 2 hour premiere of This Is Us, which was really great. I'm current on The Bachelorette. And what I think both of us are most excited to talk about, I watched the new Netflix film, Rebecca, which I believe you did as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, since I talked to you last, I watched Queen's Gambit, which is the new Netflix show. I watched the
Yes.
entirety of The Good Place
Oh, wow.
and and Rebecca.
Oh my God. Okay, so we've got a lot to talk about then. Do you
Mm-hmm.
think we can start then by chatting about Rebecca? And then I would love for you to pitch Queen's Gambit to me because I watched the trailer and I really want to watch it. Like I'm so there, but I'd be really curious to hear your
Mm-hmm.
take on that specifically.
Okay, so yeah, definitely. Where did you want to start with Rebecca?
Let's start with Rebecca. Yes. Do you want to tell me your initial thoughts first? Because I remember us talking when we were last talking about it. You hadn't seen it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Tell me what you thought.
yeah, because I'm an absolute nerd, I really wanted to read the book first. So
Okay.
maybe like Sunday I started reading it. Although it's so short. Um, but I read the book and I immediately watched the movie, and it was a first of all great adaptation, except for like maybe like the last 20 minutes were different. But honestly, I kind of liked the the changes to transform and like translate on screen. You kind of had to change some of the stuff, and then they added like, an extra scene at the end that wasn't in the book, which kind of made it more of a positive spin,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which was nice. But I loved it. It was
I
so good.
I knew just like from the vibe of it that it seemed like something you would really enjoy. But then again, I thought you'd like Phantom of the Opera too, and you didn't love that. So sometimes I'm wrong about things. I'm really happy you loved it. It was an emotional ride watching that for me. And I went into it, I had not read the book. and I had not seen the original. I didn't even know that there was an original like I didn't realize this was a remake of a previous movie or based on a book at all. I went into it
Mhm.
pretty blind, honestly.
Yeah, that the book has actually been on like my to read list for a long time. I just never gotten around to reading it. So I finally was like, okay, we're gonna read it and we're gonna watch it. It's gonna be great. And I mean, it was the psychological thriller aspect of it that makes me tick. I was so into it.
Absolutely. I I like the kind of tension that it had without ever going into sort of like I watched it. I want to say it was like the weekend before Halloween or something like that. So I guess it would have been a little over a week ago at this point. But it was at a time where I was like, oh, I can like watch a little. It can be kind of scary just to be like in the spooky season mode. But I didn't really want to be like terrified right before bed. I didn't want to see like gore or like just things that are
Mm-hmm.
generally unpleasant. Like I really just wanted like a tense spooky mystery, and I feel like that's exactly what I got, and it really messes with your head. There are so many times where I expected them to have sort of like
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming gore or blood everywhere, and you really never get that. Even at spoilers, the moment where the wife is being dragged out of the ocean, you see her covered with kind of a cloth, and her hair is like, you know, kind of hanging downward. I just expected to see, like at any point the canvas is going to flip over and you're going to see like a bony rotting face, or just something that's just like really stomach churning and gross, and you really don't get that, which I liked. It only messed with your head without going for any sort of like cheap shock value.
Yeah, like the only shock value it really did was like the jump scare, but more often than not, the jump scare was like she was like in some place where technically she could be. It's
Right.
her house now.
Right.
She's allowed to be there, but because she's so like nervous and skittish, she is always freaked out by this housekeeper of hers, and so anytime the housekeeper just enters the room, she's like, "Whoa."
I I loved the way the housekeeper was portrayed. I loved the tension she was able to bring to it. I love the facial expression, just everything about it. It was so good. I would say as a positive, what was the guy's name? Like what's Rebecca's um or not?
Maxim.
Yes. Uh yeah. Did he go by Max or something? I'm trying to remember. I'm so bad with names now. Whatever he is, this sounds like a negative, but I mean this as a positive. He seemed kind of inconsequential to me at many points, but I really liked that. It really
Mm-hmm.
did feel like both the woman you're seeing on screen, plural, and the woman you're not seeing on screen, but whose presence and vibe are kind of guiding the story, really are the lead, even at points where he is there and his Fred or whatever his like sidekick, like any of the other guys there, they almost seem like inconsequential at many points compared to the woman, which I really liked.
Well, and especially since, I mean, if we're going on like scale of the actions committed, he technically committed the most egregious act. He did kill Rebecca. Spoilers.
Mhm.
Um, he did. He was the one that killed Rebecca, but comparatively to like the emotional effect that everybody else had, Rebecca and the housekeeper vampires were far more influential on like the plot of the story, even though Rebecca is dead.
Mhm. I I'm looking at the cast as well, and another thing I wanted to bring up here, Lily James as Mrs. De Winter, such a good job in that role. Like absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, she did a really great job at playing into the uh, entirely naive, but also like I'm constantly experiencing secondhand embarrassment while watching her do everything until the act 3. Like until we get down to the last minute, I'm like, hey, you're so, like, I feel so bad for you. You were so embarrassing. Not like in a bad way, but it's like you can constantly feel she's embarrassed and you
Mm.
just feel it. It's like, ah, mm, that's so bad until like she understands everything that's going on. And it's like a snap. It's almost like a Lady Macbeth, but like she's not evil. She's just like her perspectives like clicks in place, and then she's like, okay, let's get down to business. You did a bad thing, but I still love you. Like we're gonna get you off the hook. I'm gonna protect you. Like this is fine. Don't you worry about it. And it's very funny how that shift was just immediate for her and how she went from this awkward, uncomfortable, innocent girl to a confident yet still kind and compassionate and but we're very resilient young woman in just a conversation. And it was a beautiful transformation for her character.
You always put things so well. I'm like, yes, that's exactly how the words are in my head, but they don't come out that way. I see it as like the opposite of a descent into madness. I feel like throughout this whole movie, at every step, it kind of, I was expecting that she might, I didn't want her to, but I was expecting she might have sort of a descent into madness. And she doesn't have a descent into madness. She has like an ascent into her more fulfilled self, her stronger self, her self that has a dark side, has a good side, has just more to her than what we see at the beginning when she's just, a lady's maid.
I mean, she definitely, well, she's a companion, but
Mhm.
she has like a phoenix, like from the ashes kind of story almost. She is a beautiful, young, innocent young girl, and then she experiences the psychological torture that is Miss Danvers and an Oliver Queen esque husband who thinks he's protecting her from his own turmoil. Because
Mhm.
if he just told her from the very beginning, she would have been so much better. But um, once, like, once everything burns around her, like that moment when she almost commits suicide, and then just the next couple scenes later, she finds out everything. It's like, okay, you got burnt down. You were completely burnt. And
Mhm.
now you can rebuild yourself back up into the stronger version of yourself.
And it shows how close she's able to get to that edge, really, and
Yeah.
kind of makes it out as a necessity. You mentioned, and I have not read the book and I haven't watched the previous version of the movie. You mentioned that they added something at the end that you felt gave it a more positive spin. How is this different than the ending of the book for you?
So in the book, or at least the abridged version that I read, um, the people that go to Dr. Baker's office, it's a more like presented group. It's like with this officer and Danvers, and actually Maxim is there too, and she goes as well. And it's more of like they're all in a group, like patiently waiting to see what the write up had said. And I think they changed it for several reasons. I think a lot of it was just it's a better translation onto screen. It's a more like suspenseful, like climactic transition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then after that, when she gets Maxim released and they're going home, the end of the book is just a very slight hint. Like it just talks about how there's crimson coming up in the skies. They never reach uh, Manderley in the book.
Oh
It
wow.
just ends with you hearing that there's fire. So that
Okay.
the fact that it continues on adding, you see them both be good people and like people that want to save their servants and like decent people that go running into the fire that like just want to help people that are in their burning house. And then she also realizes it's Danvers and runs after Danvers. And even though Danvers has like psychologically tortured her, she still is pleading with Danvers not to kill herself. And then you at the end of the book you're left with the question of like, are they going to recover from this? Are they going to be able to be happy after this? Or are they going to suffer what could easily be suffered from that kind of loss and become like a loveless marriage, hate each other, resent each other, all this? And instead they show them, presumably a couple years later, in Cairo, living relatively happy. My one wish, it's a really weird wish, but I wish in that scene in Cairo, if they are going to add that extra scene, I wish they had named her. They had like said her first name when they were in Cairo.
I was
Because it's a
wondering
very
about that the
like,
entire time. And in fact, just now when I was pulling up the cast list again to like try to remember everything, I was specifically looking like, did I miss it? Whether they said her name, because that was a red. I always watch things with captions because like I just have the worst hearing in the world, as evidenced by the fact that I'm like a chronic interrupter, even though I don't mean to be. um, and I watching with captions from the very beginning, they start by like referring to her as just like Mademoiselle, you know, like when they're like crediting each line, they refer to her as just like Mademoiselle, which is all she had been
yeah.
referred to as, and then like very quickly switch to calling her, you know, Mrs. De Winter or whatever. And then that's all they do. And I was just like, you know, at first I thought that was some sort of like a clue, like maybe she's, and for a large part of it, I was thinking way too much like in a mystery mindset. And I was thinking maybe she
Mm-hmm.
is somebody who was hired as a plant by his sister to try to make sure that his lineage stops, so that Mandalay goes to his sister's kids, because that was something that was mentioned earlier. You know, like there was just like, I had a lot of like
Yeah.
mystery based theories that were wrong and also didn't necessarily fit the genre. But a lot of them were based around the fact that they never said her name. And so it wasn't that I was suspicious of her being just like bad, like a villain, but I was suspicious about the fact that she didn't have a history. Later, by the end, I realized that was like more metaphorical and it had to do with her journey, whatever. But I'm right there with you that I wish they had said her name, and or thought that I missed it towards the end that they did, but they didn't.
So a big like literary technique, especially in the Gothic Romance era, that was followed like in the 1830s. This book was written in the 1930s, and there's a whole bunch of history about this book that it's fascinating. I
Mm.
did like one little Wikipedia search. I'm like, this is crazy. Um, but it's very obvious that it took some clues. There's like some guidance from the Gothic romances of like the Bronte sisters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a in that era, it was very common for them to make a statement by not naming a female character,
Mm.
um, either until the very end or never at all, to kind of show, does she have her own agency, anything like that. So they never did it in the book, and I like that they never do it in the book. But if they were going to add that little epilogue in the movie, which I appreciated, I liked, it gave like just an artistic signature to the movie, which was fine. I wish they would have given her a first name, because essentially what they have done is they have given her her own agency and she has earned her own name. Because in the beginning, she was kind of this pawn in everybody else's game. She was a companion to a very overbearing lady. Then she was married to a man who loved her but was he was very reclusive about his emotions.
Mm-hmm.
She was a pawn to Mrs. Danvers, who really should have been her servant, even though she came from a lower class. Once she married, oh well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of one of those things that once she, as her own individual, not because of her own station or anything, but because of her own personal strength, achieved personal agency, and like she earned a name, and they never gave it to her. And I'm like, okay, if you're gonna have the epilogue, you should have named her, but whatever.
It's a really good point and really good connection to the literature of the time.
I
I
told you, if I started talking about Rebecca, I could talk for hours about Rebecca.
I could as well. I when I watched it with my husband, who does not like scary movies, like at all. And he hadn't seen the
Mhm.
trailer in advance, but I kind of warned him, like, oh, okay, it might kind of be a scary movie. I don't really know, whatever. And I expected him to ditch it at any time. And he was kind of like, I don't want to say stressed, but I guess like on edge while watching it
Yeah.
throughout. But he stayed the entire, like he was in it, he was there the entire time. And then afterwards, like no matter what we would try to change the subject to, like whatever, oh, blah blah blah, just like the boring adult things. Like, did you get the quote for the AC repair? And just like boring
Yeah.
bullshit like that. We would always eventually go back to like, so Rebecca, that one scene, and I was just like, and it was like he was trying, like he wasn't even like being like a diehard fan of the movie. He was like, okay, I've hit, by the end of it, he was like, I've hit my scary movie quota for like the year. I'll watch another one
Mhm.
next Halloween or whatever. But then like he likewise, exactly as you're saying, like couldn't stop talking about it no matter what else we were trying to talk about.
Mhm.
I will say though, and I'm gonna pull up the associated imagery for it. I do want to, and we can come back to talking about Rebecca, but I do want to hear your thoughts on the Queen's Gambit specifically, or do they just go by Queen's Gambit? They go by the Queen's Gambit. Um, Specifically, I, not having watched it, I want to hear like what are the key reasons I should watch it, and also this is the same actress who played Emma in the latest Jane Austen's Emma, right?
Mhm. Yes.
What was it like seeing her in this kind of role as compared to her in a Jane Austen role? And I don't know if you've seen the M. Night Shyamalan movie Split. She was in that as well, which I really liked.
Yeah, I didn't see him Split, but so it wasn't that hard to like keep her and Emma apart. Bro, the accent was different, the hair color was different, the clothes were very different, the characters were extremely different. So it wasn't terribly difficult to keep that apart, and especially since she's a very great actress, it it wasn't very hard for me to separate them out. Some I have experienced that before. You look the same and you act the same. You're the same character, but this wasn't a problem. Um, but so the show is like set in the 60s,
Okay.
during the Cold War, which is kind of like a little bit about. It has a little bit into that, and basically you meet this girl and she is like 8 or 9 maybe, and she is taken to an orphanage after her mom died in a car accident with her in the car,
Okay.
and she has a hard time adjusting, and one of the older girls like kind of takes her under her wing, and so she also so her mom also was a like, math professor, so she's really good at math, and
Okay.
so her math teacher always let her like go like do the uh, chalkboard eraser, like get the dust out in the basement and stuff like that. And throughout these like exchanges, she actually meets the janitor, and the janitor plays chess, and he teaches her how to play chess, and then the story kind of evolves with her like developing a drug problem, drug addiction, and then also getting out of the orphanage and becoming a famous chess player and doing it like to help support herself and the struggles with addiction and with the pressures of being successful and why that pushes her to continue taking drugs and stuff like that, and the effect that has um, on her own health and mental health and everything else like that. And it's just a really interesting thing because it talks about like competition and mental health and drug use, um, while also having like beautiful settings and uh, fashion, and the character development is amazing for tons of characters. it has so many of the grayscale characters that I like to look at. Where like nobody's great, but
Right.
nobody's awful. You're all just people.
You
And it
had
also,
me at grayscale characters. That's exactly what I
yeah,
want out of this.
yeah, because I was really happily surprised that they avoided a lot of like tropes and stereotypes about certain characters that they have in here, and they made them far more interesting and like dynamic characters just by kind of making them real people instead, which then make them even more interesting because they weren't like the trope. That's so cool.
I'm very excited to watch it. It has bumped itself even higher up on my list now.
Yeah,
I
I
know,
watched it the day it came out in one day.
wow. It's only like 8 episodes, right? It's like 7 or 8,
Yeah, like
something
eight or
like that.
nine.
Yeah. And it's an event series, right? Like it's not at all setting up for any kind of like follow up, next season, sequel, whatever.
It said a limited series, but I also saw like an article mentioning the season two.
Okay.
It is a pretty conclusive ending, I think, but it, there is definitely ways they can continue it.
Okay. Well, this time next week, it may be the headline show that I'm talking about. So, fingers crossed. I the when trying to think through like what I would, obviously we're not on TV Code this week. We're trying the live stream on YouTube thing, and it's kind of a weird week because it's the first week we're doing that and we're trying to get our sea legs under us with that. And I'm kind of almost treating this as just sort of a practice round today because I didn't really even talk about it throughout the day because, like, there's the whole like democracy situation going on today and possibly for the rest of the week. But had we been on TV Co, one of the things that they have you do is they have you, tag your broadcast as a specific show. And I would usually tag it as whatever show I was going to talk about the most or whichever one I was going to talk about first. And that was like kind of my spotlight show. And I was thinking this week, like, I don't really know what I would consider the spotlight piece because technically I would assume it'd be This Is Us because that was the one that had the premiere and that was like a big 2 hour premiere. Whereas Schitt's Creek, which is what I spent like most of my time technically watching 6 seasons of, has already ended, and they're not doing a second, or they're not doing a seventh season, I guess, or so that's over and done with. But This Is Us was actually the one I was least excited to talk about this week. I was very excited to talk about Rebecca, obviously, not a show, it's a movie, but still, I know we both were. And then, it's so dumb, but like, The Bachelorette is such a mess this season that I will happily talk about that anytime. And Schitt's Creek was just like, we don't really have to get into it, but just like such a good show. And I was really excited to hear your thoughts on the Queen's Gambit to kind of set up for it. But like, This Is Us is the one that I was like, I literally only like Beth and Randall going into this season. And like, after watching the 2 hour premiere, I'm like, I still only like Beth and Randall. So next week I'm hopeful that like the spotlight show will be the Queen's Gambit, and um we'll be happy to see it taking spotlight. You don't watch This Is Us, right?
No, I've watched like bits and pieces of it, so I know most of the characters you're talking about, but I don't have. I just can't. I don't know.
Yeah. Did you ever watch the TV show Parenthood?
No.
No. That was several years. It was,
No.
I think that might have ended like 4 years ago or something. So it was before your time. But it kind of reminds me of
Yeah, I
sort of
wasn't
the
watching
the
TV
same
actively
vibe
back
of
then.
just like, did you say you weren't watching TV back then?
No, not really. I think I watched Rain and maybe once, but that's it.
brain. What
So
was
high
that?
quality
That
television.
was popping up on like my Netflix or something, and I was like, desperate times call for desperate measures. I think I was genuinely considering watching that about a month ago. It was like at some point mid
Rain.
quarantine when I was like, I would watch a show with pretty, medieval dresses and evil queens. Like that could be cool. But I didn't.
Both of them were good at the time, and now I really don't want to rewatch them because I'm like, I bet it's going to be terrible. You don't want to ruin the nostalgia.
Well, with This Is Us, all I really have to say is that I still only like Beth and Randall, unsurprisingly, and I there's like key storylines that they're starting for each of the three kids so far this season. I love Beth and Randall's storyline. It's really timely. Basically, it's them, he's a city council person, and it's them working through the very real life pressures following the whole like murder situation with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and like all of that. Like it's set in present time, right? And you also see, as a city council person, he's working to try to get like PPE during COVID to like other people in the city. There's just like a lot of like really timely things that could so easily be done not well that are done well. There's one scene in particular where he has had a therapist for a couple seasons, I want to say, and they'll occasionally show like his sessions with her, and you see at the beginning of the 2 hour thing they're doing like a Zoom therapy session, which was like really cool, like that's very like relevant, and it was very well done. And then the one scene which I thought was just like so thoughtful and impactful and just an interesting move for his character is they actually have him switch therapists. He decides he doesn't want to see her anymore. He wants to seek out someone else because he wants to seek out a black therapist, and they've had him with a white female therapist since he started therapy. So that was really interesting and like smart, and I'm really excited about the storyline. I'm like into it. Everything they have going on with Kevin and Kate. So first of all, Kevin randomly got Kate's friend pregnant, like the first time he slept with her, and it's twins. He went from like it being like this completely casual thing, like he barely knew her. I don't even think like at the time he slept with her, like he barely knew her name type of situation, to like he's proposing to her in this premiere. And she has twins and they're moving in together. And I'm just like, you just went from 0 to 60 so fast. And I like her, but I don't like him. So her storyline just like went downhill for me. And then there's this scene where Kevin is telling Kate that he got Madison pregnant and it's twins or whatever. And it's one of the first scenes you see. And like, first of all, I cannot stand Kevin or Kate. I feel like I've made that abundantly clear. But the one thing about Kevin is like, he cannot take anything seriously. He cannot be kind and he cannot be reliable. And the one thing about Kate is she makes literally everything about herself, and she is always a miserable victim, literally no matter what's going on. So Kevin's telling her that. So, like in this situation where Kevin's telling her he got her friend pregnant with twins, I'm like, well, nobody's about to be good here. There's just, this is just all going to be. Anyways, so Kevin's telling Kate, Madison's just like there, incidental, like, poor girl, this storyline. What did she do to get saddled with this? And then Kate's like, it becomes this whole thing where like it's supposed to be this moment about Kevin and Madison saying that they're like pregnant with twins. And it becomes this whole moment about Kate of like, oh, how's Kate gonna take it? Is Kate okay? Like, is she smart? Like she is just sort of like this fluttery, like, I don't know how I feel. Oh, I guess we're happy. And like as soon as she's happy, then everybody's happy. I'm like, oh my God, like why was this whole scene about like everything about that, the way that scene was done was like it was so in character, like that she would make every like that it was all about like whether Kate's okay. but still so annoying. And then like Kevin leaving Madison in the car to like tell Kate and Toby that Madison's pregnant with twins. So just like the whole way he does it is just like Madison is such a like prop and just like incident. Everything about that scene captures every reason why I don't like Kevin or Kate. Thank you for coming to my weekly This Is Us TED Talk, in which I explain to you that Beth and Randall are the only good characters on this show.
Now you just explained certainly why I can't watch it, because Kate sounds like some of the characteristics I hate the most, and I can't be that. That's my name. And Kevin, my dad's name is Kevin. I can't do that with my brain.
I'm so sorry that she's like ruining your name through this show.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, you'll just have to raise the Kate reputation. Okay. Enough about This Is Us. I had just said for I don't know how long that I like didn't have much to say about it except negative, and then I went on a whole long rant anyways. But since we're going down this path of shows that you don't want to watch, why not continue with The Bachelorette? So what you're seeing on screen right, I just wanted to like share this with the class, and by the class I mean you, because I'm pretty sure we're the only people in the entire country right now not watching election footage. So who you are seeing on your screen right now is the current Bachelorette, Claire, and the guy that she's like obsessed with and ready to ditch the entire show after. I want to say it was like, I think it's been in Showtime 10 days, but I think she technically is like rumored to leave the show after 12 days of filming. Oh, we have Carrie in the chat, by the way. I'm just now looked over at that. Carrie says, totally had an old man nap take effect. What have I missed? Well, Carrie, what you have missed, and I'm sorry if I'm getting to your question late. I just now glanced over at the chat because we're on a different platform, YouTube, Live, Stage 10. We have talked so far about Rebecca, the new Netflix movie. It's great, 10 out of 10. We both recommend. Kate was explaining to me, let me point in the right direction. Kate was explaining to me that I should be watching Queen's Gambit, which I definitely intend to watch in the next week after watching, 48 million more hours of election coverage. And I was explaining why Beth and Randall are still the only good characters on This Is Us, but we all knew that. That's not surprising. And now, as you can see on screen, the little, am I pointing the right direction? Ish. This situation right here, Claire and Dale, I was going to catch her up on what's going on The Bachelorette. She didn't ask and she doesn't want to hear about it. You didn't ask and you didn't want to hear about it. Nobody wants to hear about it, but I'm still gonna. I'm still
we're gonna hear about it anyway.
Yeah. So what happened? And the next episode, by the way, is tomorrow. I know we're all really excited and we're all gonna be watching live, right? Right, guys? There can't be anything else like wildly important going on that everybody else would be watching instead, right? So at the point of the latest episode, they were supposed to be, first of all, there was supposed to be like a cocktail party, and then he like stole her for half the time, and then she had like a meltdown because the guys weren't like stealing her aside fast enough, and so he was like trying to talk her down from that. Then she like canceled the rest of the party, canceled one of the dates, tried to schedule a different cocktail party in place of one of the dates to like get to know the guys better so she would have more like talking time. Did not use the talking time, kept like sneaking aside with Dale instead, took him back to her room like dead ass in the middle of a cocktail party. They had like to do one like fun activity, and it was supposed to be like a comedy roast. Like they brought in this comedian to like help, basically like it was it was like basically a lesson on like how to be funny with the guys, and then the guys all got to do like a roast, and a lot of them were like obviously roasting Dale. Did I call him Dave? Anyway, his name is Dale. They were like roasting him because he's been such a like teacher's pet type of thing. And then she like got like really it was like very like middle high school type of vibe of like, you just insulted my man, that's not funny, or just jealous, when like this whole thing was supposed to be a roast. Like they weren't roasting him out of nowhere. It was literally the date that was, it was literally the whole thing was like supposed to be this funny comedy date where they all like roast each other. So they roasted him because like he's essentially like main character, right? Because like he's the only person she's spending time with. And she got like really defensive, which was like kind of embarrassing because like I don't know, something about it was like he didn't need protecting. Like he was just fine. Like he wasn't even like handling it badly being the target of the roast, you know what I mean? Like they were all like cracking jokes about him or whatever, and he was fine. Like he's straight chilling. Like he knows he has this show in the bag if he wants it. Like he does not care. And they were not even being like that mean. They were just like teasing him about the kind of things that you can like air on like, you know, regular mainstream television. They weren't like digging in. And she spent like the entire next cocktail party being like, so you were cracking, it's like any one-on-one she had, she was like, so you were cracking jokes about Dave. Like, what is it about him? What made you say it? Like basically just like accosting people for doing what they were instructed to do, which was roast each other. Um, and doing what she does, which is only talk about Dale. And it was just really dumb. Like there was something just like very immature about it. And then there was this whole other storyline that they were carrying over from last week of like the guy who didn't like that they did strip dodgeball and they made him out to be the villain. And he seemed really annoying. So I'm fine with him being the villain. Like did not bother me a bit. But the whole thing, like the quintessential moment where I was like, this is so dumb, but like I'm here and loving it, was when she was just like going buck wild trying to defend Dale against a comedy roast, which was literally like the scheduled date. It was so funny to me when Dale did not need her help. Carrie says she basically made it clear Dale's her choice. Doesn't that just end the show? I mean, what's supposed to happen next? Great question. We do already know what's going to happen next. So there's like, I don't know, 20 something guys still left, like a whole season's worth of guys still left because she's only cut a couple guys so far. Some have willingly left because I don't want to be mean and say she's, anyways, all I'm saying is most of the guys are left, but very few of the guys, like one and a half of the guys are like attached to her emotionally in any way. And that's basically like Dale and like one other guy who's really nice and like putting in his best effort type of thing. None of the other guys have even like spent time with her, so it's not like they would even have an emotional attachment with her. But also like I just don't think like it's just very much like a really he's just not that into you situation. Like it's both ways. Like she's just not that into them. Like Dale is her choice. She's feeling Dale and she's not feeling them, and it really goes both ways. Like the rest of them are not feeling her, you know? Like they're not being mean to her, but they're like not jumping at the chance to like talk to her and spend time with her. You know what I mean? Anyways, so what's going to happen is she's going to leave the show. I believe it's on day 12 of filming. So I think we got 2 more days, which are going to be incorporated into this next episode. And then they're bringing in their backup bachelorette. So we're bringing in a whole new bachelorette for these guys, and we'll see how that goes. But the new bachelorette that they're bringing on, I guess she's been in, so like she was in a previous season of The Bachelor or something like that. I hadn't seen her, so I don't really like know. I hadn't watched whatever season she was on before, so I don't know anything about her. But a lot of people are really excited about it. She looks really hot, so that's all I can go by is looks right now. But a lot of people were really excited about it, that like she has like great personality or something. So I'm all for it because like the Claire thing has run its course. Like she's found her man, she's there, like he's found his person. None of the rest of the guys are here for her at this point, and like it's no hard feelings either way. So I'm excited to bring in a new bachelorette and retroactively find out what happens with Claire and Dave, if that works out for both of them. Dale, not Dave. Have I talked you into watching this show, Kate?
Sorry, no.
Oh, okay. That's completely fair. Have I talked you into watching Schitt's Creek? Whoops. I just
Uh,
Schitt's
you
Creek
didn't
all
really
over the
talk
place.
about Schitt's Creek. You just said you watched it.
Okay. Well, let me take us out with that one. So, reasons you should watch Schitt's Creek. Number one, it's really funny. Like, probably one of the funniest shows I've watched in the last couple years. Like, just like genuine, like comedy. You know what I mean? Like, even if there
Mhm.
were like a whole episode where like I always knew what the storyline was because it's like not hard to follow. Like, this is not something you need mini brain cells for. But
Mhm.
even if it was something like where I didn't know what the storyline was, the micro writing, the dialogue is hilarious. The cast is incredible, like just comedy geniuses, and the premise is like genuinely really funny. Like aside from like the micro writing being funny, the macro writing, it's like these rich LA people who used to like own a major nationwide business that like went bankrupt end up in a town called Schitt's Creek, which they had bought as a joke at one point. So it's like their literal only possession that they had left. It's just so funny. The the dialogue, the chemistry between characters, like everything about it is hilarious. There was a really good, like, cute romance. There's multiple cute romances, but there's a really good, cute romance that, like, no spoilers, really has like a beautiful, happily ever after wedding in the final episode type of thing. Like, just really, really cute. Um, it's so good. And it's one of those shows where it's like going into like the first season or two, it's hilarious and you love all the characters, but you also think like all the characters are like awful people. But by the end, it's like it can like almost be a tearjerker between funny lines. So the four people
So,
that you see on screen are the family in question.
so have you seen The Good Place? Because I don't normally watch comedies, but I loved The Good Place.
I loved The Good Place. So
So
good.
is it kind of similar?
Um, in some ways, yes. So in terms of it's a half-hour comedy with really good like micro writing. So like the dialogue is snappy and funny, good kind of macro setting.
Hmm.
All of that, where there's a little bit of like um over the topness to it. Yes, in all of that way, like in that way, it's similar. The way in which The Good Place is different is The Good Place kind of has this ongoing philosophical and like spiritual thread to it, where it's not usually just like throwaway comedy. Like there's something else that you're thinking about with The Good Place as it goes on. The whole like, what do we owe to each other, and like those kind of questions woven in. Whereas like Schitt's Creek doesn't really bite off an overall philosophical message. There are a few moments where there is like this idea of like family and found family, kind of some messages about rethinking inherent classism that we may have, and stuff like that, discovering who we are when we're outside of our original circle. There are some, bigger themes like that, but it does not bite off quite as much as The Good Place bites off. Because of that, I would say The Good Place maybe has a little bit more rewatchability than Schitt's Creek. I'm not sure I would be immediately jumping to go rewatch Schitt's Creek right at this second. Whereas The Good Place, I feel like as soon as I was done with it, I wanted to rewatch it. But there's a lot of other similarities where if you like The Good Place, I feel like I could recommend Schitt's Creek to you.
Okay,
Watch the first couple episodes
then
and
I
see what
might.
you think of it.
Okay, I might try it because I really didn't think I was gonna like The Good Place, and then I watched it in like a week, all like 20 hours of it.
It's crazy good. What do you think of the ending?
I mean, it was kind of like bittersweet, but it was really good. And I was in the middle of season 3, and I kind of just like mentioned it to my mom. And like I'm crazy and obsessive. Like sometimes I can start a season and I can't stop and I
Uh-huh.
have to finish at least that season before I do anything else. I'm bad. She is a monster. She made me stay up with her till 4 in the morning one night to watch season one.
Legend.
Yeah.
Had you already had like some of the things like spoiled for you,
No,
like the
I didn't
season
know
one?
anything about it.
Oh, that's awesome.
I
So
know it was commonly, I had heard about it being talked about, but it really didn't seem like something I would like. So I never, people might have told me things, but I genuinely did not know anything, like remember anything going in. So it was blind for me.
wow. I remember like maybe I'm dumb for not having figured it out necessarily, but I remember really being surprised by and enjoying the fact that I was surprised by the season 1 twist at the end. And I didn't have it spoiled. I think I was watching it either live or very shortly after live, and I just like I I'm usually, you know me, like I'm pro spoilers. I'm perfectly fine with having things spoiled, but that was the
Mhm.
season 1 twist that this is actually the bad place or whatever. Like I remember just enjoying being surprised by that so much.
I don't know if it's just because I can't get out of my own head, but I think I was around like episode 8 or 9, and I noticed like, okay, this is not like paradise. Like this is nice, like no taxes, like all this great stuff. But this is not paradise. So I had that question. I also had the question of like, okay, how much farther can they take this going with story? So I kind of like spoiled it for myself. I was like, no, this is not the good place. That's gonna be the twist. That's gonna be how this season ends. And I didn't realize how exactly on point I was. And it was kind of like, well, that was good. But I'm a little frustrated that I got it.
I'm not surprised you got it. You're very good at like thinking through like macro story pacing.
Mm, sometimes to my own detriment, but yeah.
I'm glad you liked it though. That is that's such a good show. The
Mhm.
at Dragon Con, I guess for last 2 years, I want to say it was. I've been on, or I've been at or on the Good Place fan panel, and that's like the one fan panel I've been at in I want to like with that particular track that I like do American Sci-Fi Fantasy Media with them, that I would say had the most like passionate fans and fan theories. Like it put me to like I thought I was a big fan of the show because like I watch it and you know, like I mentioned, like there's rewatchability. I will rewatch episodes. I will like rewatch them with other people, and I don't rewatch things a lot. But the level of like extensive fan theories and research into like spiritual and philosophical, you know, theories and existential ideas of, you know, unpacking this question of like what do we owe to each other, and like how does the show answer that, and what is, you know, this all mean, and what is the good place, and like the meaning of life and all that. Like it's so crazy how like a half-hour comedy really did do a good job at deeply diving into some of these things, you know, like they didn't explore every single corner of philosophy at all times and in all ways, but they really did a good job at diving into these topics while still remaining light and funny and hilarious. And in doing so, inspired like a lot of fan passion and theories and speculation
Mhm.
and stuff. It was it's really cool to
Well,
see obviously online, but it's really cool to see like that level of like joy in person, you know.
yeah. I mean, when I finished it, I definitely felt like I would have liked it even more if I was able to watch it live because it was kind of like I would only watch a couple episodes at a time, but it was like I only had like a day or two in between every time I would watch an episode. So I didn't have all this time to like ruminate on different ideas and like different theories. So I think I would have really liked that, especially since like you've seen how crazy I can go with like really serious shows in my theories. So
I
a
would
show
give
that I can really like
anything to have
bound
had you
with.
like I would give anything to have had you like watching that week to week just so I would get to like read the day after like your analysis of it. That would
My 1,000 word essays that I would send you.
yes. Yes. That would have really
I
enhanced the show for me, genuinely.
I several times for Arrow wrote things that were well over 1,000 words. And
It
like
was
I
so
would do
good
that in an
though.
hour. I would sit down in the night, like that night, and in 1 hour I'd write it all out. And I'm like, okay, time for bed.
Those were so good. Like your analysis of like your ability to like not just recap it, but like add analysis in with the recap, so good. You 10 out
It's
of
shocking.
10. Really wish I could have had that experience of reading that for The Good Place is what we're going to take away from this.
Well, and I wish I would have like found the podcast way earlier and like started doing it because I started watching Arrow in season 6. And in season 6, I had all these things that I needed to say, especially about season 6, episode 11, which I know you liked as well.
Mhm.
Um, so looking back, I'm like, why did you not find that sooner? Why could you not have written all these other essays about it? Because my
Well,
post season 6 essay would have been extensive.
legendary. One for the books. Well, to all the shows that we didn't review, cheers. We are 4 minutes overtime, so I'm going to get you out of here so you can get some sleep and start feeling better. I think that this live stream platform went pretty well this week. I do kind of like the setup and the ability to kind of like toggle the layout and all of that and have different pictures and stuff on screen. That was really fun. So I think if it's cool with you, if it's I didn't really promote this live stream, so we'll see if many others find it. But anybody watching, let me know in the comments obviously what you watched this week, but also what you think of this being on YouTube live now. um and I think we'll try it again next week. We'll be back on here again to chat about probably Queen's Gambit and whatever other shows I've watched. Maybe The Good Doctor. All right. I will see you same time, same place next week, where we will hopefully not still be wondering what's going on with the US presidential election. Bye.